I'm going to tell you about something that happened in November of 2019. Something I've tried to explain to rangers, to investigators, to anyone who would listen. But how do you explain what doesn't make sense? How do you convince people that what you saw was real when you can barely convince yourself? My name is Marcus Webb. I'm a licensed hunting guide in northern Idaho, been doing it for 17 years. I know these mountains. I know how elk move through the timber, how weather patterns shift in the high country, how to read tracks in fresh snow. I've spent more nights in the wilderness than I have in my own bed. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. I'm not some weekend warrior who got spooked by shadows. What happened to my client, to James Harding, shouldn't be possible. But his rifle is still out there, and James never came back. It started normal. That's what gets me. It started like every other guided hunt I've done. James contacted me through my website in August, said he wanted a late season elk hunt, something remote, something challenging. He was a software engineer from Seattle, early 40s, recently divorced. He'd done some hunting before, but never anything serious. He wanted to get away, he said. Needed to disconnect, needed silence. I should have paid more attention to that word, silence. We met at the trailhead on November 18th, around 4 in the morning. It was cold, maybe 15 degrees, and the stars were so bright they hurt to look at. James showed up in a new truck, top-of-the-line gear. Everything still had tags on it. His rifle was a Remington 700 in .30, 06, beautiful gun, expensive scope. He'd clearly dropped some money on this trip. "You ready for this?" I asked him as we loaded our packs. He nodded, staring up at the mountain. "I need this. I really need this." There was something in his voice, desperation maybe, or exhaustion, the kind that sits deep in your bones. I've guided plenty of guys going through divorces, through midlife crises, through whatever drives people to the mountains looking for answers. I didn't think much of it. We started hiking at 4:30 a.m, headlamps cutting through the dark. The plan was to get about 8 miles in, set up a base camp near Kettle Creek, then hunt the ridges above Timberline. It's remote country up there. The nearest road is 12 miles away. Cell service disappears about 3 miles in. I always tell clients that. I always make sure they understand. James's phone lost signal around 6 a.m, just as the sky was starting to lighten. I watched him check it, watched the bars drop to nothing. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned it off completely and put it in his pack. "Feels good," he said, being unreachable. The hike-in was quiet. James didn't talk much, which was fine by me. Some clients never shut up, filling every silence with nervous chatter. James just walked, breathing hard in the thin air, stopping occasionally to look at the country around us. The aspens were bare, their white trunks like bones against the dark pines. Frost covered everything, turning the world into something crystalline and strange. We reached our camp spot around 10 a.m. Kettle Creek runs through a small meadow surrounded by thick timber, and there's a natural bench where the ground levels out. Perfect spot for tents. We set up camp, got our gear organised, ate some food. James seemed relaxed for the first time, sitting on a log by the creek, watching the water move over rocks. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Guiding. 17 years. You ever see anything weird out here?" I paused, unsure how to answer. "Weird how?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Just weird. Things that don't make sense. Mountains play tricks on people," I said. "Lack of sleep, altitude, stress. Your mind fills in gaps with things that aren't there." He nodded slowly, but he didn't look convinced. "What's the worst thing you've seen?" I thought about it. There had been close calls with bears, clients having heart attacks, a guy who fell and broke his leg so bad I could see bone. But worst? Probably the silence, I said finally. Sometimes it gets so quiet up here it feels wrong, like the forest is holding its breath. James looked at me for a long moment. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's what I'm afraid of." That should have been my first real warning, but I didn't push it. I figured he was just nervous, dealing with whatever demons had driven him up here. We finished setting up camp, purified some water, checked our gear. The afternoon was clear and cold, temperature dropping as the sun moved west. "We'll head out tomorrow morning," I told him. "Early. Elk move at dawn." He nodded. "What about tonight?" "Tonight we rest, get some sleep. It's going to be a long day tomorrow." But neither of us slept much that first night. Around 2 a.m, I woke to the sound of something moving through our camp. Not loud, not crashing through. just the soft sound of something walking near the tents. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening. Bears don't move that carefully. Elk are heavier, louder. This sounded almost human, but the rhythm was wrong. The space in between footsteps uneven. I unzipped my tent and looked out. The moon was 3/4 full, bright enough to cast shadows. I could see our camp clearly. The coal fire pit, James's tent, our packs hanging from a tree. Nothing moved. But I could still hear it. Footsteps circling the camp, just beyond the tree line. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the beam across the forest. Nothing. Just trees and shadows and the white gleam of frost. The footsteps stopped. "You hear that?" James's voice came from his tent, barely a whisper. "Yeah." "What is it?" "Probably a deer. They get curious sometimes." He didn't respond. I kept my light on for another minute, scanning the darkness, then finally turned it off and zipped my tent closed. My heart was beating faster than it should have been, because the truth was, I didn't know what it was, and the way it moved, the deliberate slowness of it, felt wrong. The footsteps didn't come back, but I didn't sleep either. I lay there listening to the creek, to the wind in the pines, to the small sounds of the forest, and underneath it all, that silence James had mentioned, like something was waiting. Morning came cold and grey. We were up at 5 a.m, eating breakfast, checking our rifles. James looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. "You okay?" I asked. "Fine, just didn't sleep great." We headed out at first light, hiking up the ridge to the east. The plan was to glass the meadows below, look for elk moving from the bedding areas to feed. It's a waiting game, hunting. Hours of sitting still, watching, hoping for movement. We found a good vantage point around 7 a.m, settled in behind some rocks and started glassing. The valley below us was beautiful. Open park surrounded by timber, small creeks cutting through, the whole landscape painted in shades of brown and white. James sat beside me, looking through his binoculars, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. "There," he said suddenly, pointing. I swung my binoculars to where he was indicating. A herd of elk, maybe 20 animals, moving through a meadow about 800 yards below us. A couple of bulls, several cows, some calves. They were feeding, relaxed, unaware of us. "That's a nice bull on the right," I whispered. 6 points. Good animal. James watched them for a long time. Then he lowered his binoculars. "I don't want to shoot them." I looked at him. "What?" "I can't. They're just trying to live." I've had clients back out before. It happens. The reality of taking a life hits them and they can't pull the trigger. I don't judge it. "That's okay," I said. "We can just watch them if you want." He nodded, raising his binoculars again. We sat there for another hour, watching the elk feed and move. Eventually, they drifted back into the timber and disappeared. "Thank you," James said, "for understanding. It's your hunt," I told him. "We do what feels right to you." We hiked back to camp around noon. The day had warmed up slightly, maybe mid-30s, and patches of snow were starting to melt in the sun. We ate lunch, filtered more water, sat by the creek. James seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had lifted. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Sure." He was quiet for a moment, picking up the label on his water bottle. "The divorce wasn't just about growing apart or any of that normal stuff. Sarah said I scared her, said I was becoming someone else, someone she didn't recognize. I didn't say anything, just listened. I work in artificial intelligence, machine learning. I was part of a team developing predictive algorithms, patterns, behavior modeling, that kind of thing. And the thing about patterns is, once you start seeing them, you can't stop. Everything becomes a pattern. Every conversation, every decision, every movement. Sarah said I was analysing her like she was data, that I'd stopped seeing her as a person." He looked at me, and his eyes were hollow. She was right. I did. And I couldn't stop. Everything was just input and output, cause and effect. I could predict what she'd say before she said it. I could see the pattern of our marriage ending months before it happened. And I just watched it fall apart because I knew it would. Because that was the pattern. "That why you came up here?" I asked. "To break the pattern?" He nodded. "I need to stop thinking, stop analysing, just exist for a while without trying to predict what comes next." He laughed, but it was bitter. "It probably sounds crazy." No, I said. It sounds human. We spent the rest of the afternoon around camp. I cut some firewood, checked our gear, tied new leaders on my fishing line. James sat by the creek, just watching the water. He seemed calmer than he had been, more present. I thought maybe this trip was exactly what he needed. That second night, the temperature dropped hard. By 10 p.m, it was probably 5 degrees, and the stars were like ice chips in a black sky. We built up the fire, ate dinner, talked about nothing important. James told me about growing up in Oregon, about learning to hunt with his grandfather. I told him about some of the clients I'd guided over the years, the funny moments, the close calls. Around midnight, we let the fire die and headed to our tents. I was exhausted, actually looking forward to sleep. The strange sounds from the night before felt like a distant memory, probably just a deer or my imagination. I was wrong. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but it was late, deep night, the kind of dark that feels physical. I lay in my sleeping bag, trying to figure out what had woken me, and then I heard it. Breathing. Right outside my tent. Slow, deep breaths. In and out. In and out. My entire body went cold. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. Just listened to something breathing less than 3 feet away from me, separated only by a thin layer of nylon. The breathing was steady, rhythmic. Not panicked or aggressive, just there. I slowly reached for my flashlight, my hand shaking. My fingers found the metal cylinder and I wrapped my hand around it, trying to decide what to do. Shine the light, stay quiet. The breathing continued, unchanged, and then it stopped. Not gradually, not like something walking away, just stopped, mid-breath. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no creek sounds, no rustling, nothing. I waited maybe 2 minutes, my heart hammering so hard, I thought whatever was out there must hear it. Finally, I turned on my flashlight and unzipped the tent in one quick motion, shining the beam outside. Nothing. The camp was empty. Our packs still hung from the tree, the fire pit was cold, James's tent was dark and still. I played the light across the ground, looking for tracks. The frost was thick enough that anything moving through camp should have left marks. I could see my own footprints from earlier heading to the creek. I could see where James had walked from his tent to the fire pit. But around my tent, in a rough circle, the frost was disturbed. Not footprints exactly, more like something had been pressed into the ground, melting and refreezing the frost in strange patterns. The shapes didn't make sense. They weren't animal tracks or boot prints, just disturbed areas in the frost, surrounding my tent in a complete circle. "Marcus," James's voice, tight with fear. "You see it?" "See what?" "It was standing between our tents, just standing there." I swept my light to where he was pointing, the space between our tents. Nothing. I didn't see anything. I woke up and it was there. I could see its outline through the tent. It was just standing there, not moving. And then it turned towards your tent and I heard the breathing and his voice broke off. I could hear him breathing fast, almost hyperventilating. "James, calm down. There's nothing here." There was something here. I saw it. I wanted to tell him he was dreaming. The altitude and stress were playing tricks on his mind. But I'd heard the breathing too. I'd felt the presence of something outside my tent, something that shouldn't have been there. We stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting by a rebuilt fire, rifles across our laps. We didn't talk much, just watched the darkness and listened to the silence. The temperature kept dropping, and frost built up on everything. Our packs, our boots, the logs we sat on. The cold was painful, cutting through our layers. Dawn came slowly, the sky lightening to grey, then pale blue. In the growing light, we looked at the ground around the tents again. The disturbed frost was still there. Those strange pressed down areas that weren't quite tracks. James photographed them with his phone, even though there was no signal to send the pictures to anyone. "We should leave," he said. "Pack up and head back." Part of me agreed. The smart thing would have been to cut the trip short, hike back to the truck, forget this ever happened. But I've spent my entire adult life in these mountains. I've dealt with bears and storms and clients making bad decisions. I wasn't going to let some weird sounds and disturbed frost chase me out. "One more night," I said. "If anything else happens, we leave first thing in the morning. But I think we just got unlucky. Maybe a mountain lion checking us out, or a bear that hasn't denned up yet. They'll smell the human scent and leave us alone." James looked at me for a long moment. You don't really believe that? He was right. I didn't. But I said it anyway because the alternative, admitting I didn't know what was happening, felt worse. We spent the third day hiking, mostly just to get away from camp. We didn't see any more elk, didn't see much of anything really. The forest felt empty. No bird sounds, no squirrel chatter, none of the small movements and noises that usually fill the wilderness. Just that oppressive silence James had asked about on the first day. Around 3 p.m, we were on a ridge about 2 miles from camp when James stopped walking. He was staring at something ahead of us, his face gone pale. What? I asked. He pointed. About 50 yards ahead, there was a tree, a big old ponderosa pine, maybe 4 feet across at the base, and carved into the bark, maybe 7 feet up, were marks, deep gouges in the wood, 4 parallel lines, then another set below, then another, like something had clawed the tree, but too high up for any animal I knew. Bears mark trees, but not like this, not in perfect sets of 4, evenly spaced, going up the trunk in a ladder pattern. We walked closer. The marks were fresh, pale wood showing where bark had been torn away, sap still sticky. James reached up and put his hand in one of the sets of gouges. They were wider than his palm, the spacing too far apart for human fingers. What did this? He asked. I didn't answer because I didn't have an answer. The gouges went up the tree about 15 feet, far higher than any bear could reach standing on its hind legs. And the pattern was wrong, too deliberate, too measured. We should go back, James said. Right now. This time I agreed. We hiked back to camp in silence, both of us checking over our shoulders every few minutes. The sun was already dropping toward the horizon, shadows growing long. We reached camp around 5 p.m, and I started gathering our gear while James broke down his tent. Sir, that's when we found the journal. It was sitting on the log by the fire pit, right where we'd been sitting that morning. A small notebook with a weathered cover, the pages warped like it had gotten wet and dried out multiple times. Neither of us had left it there. James picked it up and opened it. The first page had a name and date written in messy handwriting. David Kowalski, October 2017. Who's David Kowalski? James asked. I shook my head. The name wasn't familiar. There are other guides who work this area, other hunters who might have passed through. But the date bothered me. 2 years ago. The journal should have been more damaged if it had been out here that long. James flipped through the pages. Most of them were blank, but there were scattered entries, getting progressively harder to read. He started reading out loud. October 15th. Camp set up near Kettle Creek, good spot. Saw elk on the ridge, planning to hunt tomorrow morning. He flipped ahead. October 17th. Something in the camp last night. Took my food bag from the tree, didn't hear it, didn't see anything. How did it get the bag down without noise? Further. October 19th. It stood outside my tent. I could see its shape but not details. Wrong proportions, too tall, arms too long. When I shine the light it's not there, but I can hear it breathing. James's voice was shaking now. He kept reading. October 20th. I tried to leave, made it 3 miles before I realised I was walking in circles. The trail is gone. Everything looks the same. How is the trail gone? October 21st. Haven't slept in days. It doesn't attack. That's what scares me. It just watches. Just stands there. Why doesn't it do something? Why does it just watch? The next few pages were mostly illegible, the handwriting deteriorating into frantic scrawls, then one final entry clear enough to read. October 23rd. I understand now. It doesn't want to kill me. It wants me to become part of the pattern. It wants me to see what it sees. The spaces between things. The places where reality doesn't quite meet up. I can almost see them now. The gaps. And what looks back through them. If you find this, don't try to make sense of it. Don't look for patterns. That's what it wants. That's how it gets in. The last page was blank, except for a single sentence in huge, jagged letters. It only exists when you understand it. James closed the journal, his hands shaking. This is the same spot. Kettle Creek. He was camping in the same spot we are. It's a hoax, I said. Someone's idea of a joke. Is it? James looked at me, and his eyes were desperate. Is it really? I didn't answer, because I couldn't explain how a journal from 2 years ago appeared in our camp without us noticing. Couldn't explain those marks on the tree, or the sounds, or any of it. We're leaving, I said. Right now. Forget setting up camp again. We hike out tonight. James nodded frantically. We quickly packed our gear, stuffing things into our packs without organising them. The sun was setting fast, the temperature already dropping. We'd be hiking in the dark, but I didn't care. We had headlamps, we had the trail, 12 miles, and we'd be at the truck. We started hiking at 5:45 p.m, moving fast. Too fast probably, but fear was pushing us. James kept looking back over his shoulder, and I wanted to tell him to stop, to watch where he was going, but I was doing the same thing. The forest behind us was getting dark, shadows pooling between the trees. We'd been hiking for maybe 45 minutes when James stopped. "Marcus." "What?" "This tree. I recognised this tree." I looked at where he was pointing. A lightning-struck pine, the top blown off, the trunk split and blackened. "So, there's probably lots of trees that got hit by lightning up here." "No, this specific tree. We passed it 20 minutes ago. I remember because I took a picture of it." He pulled out his phone and showed me. Sure enough, there was a photo of the same tree. Timestamp showing 6:03 p.m. It was now 6:32 p.m. "We're going in circles," he said, his voice rising. "Just like the journal said, the trail's gone." "The trail's not gone, we just got turned around. Happens when you hike in the dark." But I was lying. I've been following the trail the whole time, watching for the markers, the cleared path. I know this route. I've hiked it dozens of times. We kept going, but more carefully now, me double-checking every landmark, and 40 minutes later, we passed the lightning-struck pine again. James sat down hard on the trail, put his head in his hands. "We can't get out." "Yes, we can. We just need to. It doesn't want us to leave." The way he said it, so flat and certain, made my skin crawl. Because he was right. We were being herded, circled, kept in place. Something wanted us here. We tried twice more, taking different approaches, cutting through the forest instead of following the trail. Each time, within an hour, we'd end up back at that lightning-struck tree. It was impossible. The forest isn't that small. You can't walk in a straight line and end up back where you started. But we did. By 9 p.m, we gave up and made camp again. Not at Kettle Creek. We couldn't face going back there, but just off the trail near the lightning tree. We built a fire bigger than we needed, burning through wood fast. The temperature had dropped below zero, and our breath came out in thick clouds. James sat close to the flames, the journal open on his lap, reading and rereading the entries. "Don't," I told him. "Don't try to make sense of it." That's what it said. Don't look for patterns. But I can't help it. It's what I do. I see patterns. And there's a pattern here, Marcus. In the journal entries, in where we're walking, in the sounds and the tracks and everything. James. 3-day cycles. Look. David's entries start October 15th. On the 17th, something took his food. On the 19th, it was outside his tent. On the 21st, the trail disappeared. On the 23rd, his last entry. 3 days. Then escalation. 3 days. Then escalation. He looked up at me, and there was something in his eyes I didn't like. A feverish intensity. We got here on the 18th. Tonight is the 20th. Tomorrow is the 21st. That's when the trail disappeared for David. And the day after that... Stop it. You're making connections that aren't there. Am I? Or am I finally seeing what's really there? That's what it wants, isn't it? For us to understand. To see the pattern. Because once we see it... He stopped, staring past me, into the darkness. His face went completely white. "It's here," he whispered. I turned around. The forest behind me had changed. I can't describe it better than that. The trees were the same trees. The shadows were the same shadows. But something about the space between them was wrong. Like the darkness wasn't quite fitting together correctly. Like there were gaps in reality itself. And in those gaps something was watching. Not something with eyes, just watching. Presence without form. Attention without substance. "Don't look at it," James said. "Don't try to understand it. That's how it gets stronger." But I couldn't help it. My mind was already trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to find the pattern, the explanation. And the more I looked, the more I could almost see something in those gaps. Almost see the shape of it. Almost understand. "Marcus, stop looking." James grabbed my shoulder and turned me around, breaking my focus. The moment I looked away, the feeling lessened. The wrongness was still there, but distant, manageable. "We need to stay awake," James said. "Both of us. All night. The moment we try to sleep, the moment our guard drops, that's when it will be strongest." So we stayed awake. We fed the fire constantly, burning through our entire supply of firewood, and then breaking dead branches from nearby trees. We talked about nothing, everything, anything to keep our minds occupied. James told me about his work, explaining machine learning in terms I barely understood. I told him about hunts from years ago, clients I'd guided, the time I got charged by a moose. We didn't talk about what was in the forest. We didn't look at the spaces between the trees. We just talked and fed the fire and waited for dawn. Around 3 a.m, James started asking strange questions. If you could predict the exact moment you'd die, would you want to know? No. What if you could see every decision you'd ever make before you made it? See your whole life laid out as a probability map? I wouldn't want that either. I did, he said quietly. I wanted that. I thought if I could predict everything, understand every pattern, I'd be in control. But you can't control it, Marcus. Once you see the patterns, once you really see them, you realise you're not outside them. You're part of them. You always were. James, you're not making sense. Aren't I? Think about it. Every decision you've ever made led you here. Every choice, every accident, every moment. All of it flowing toward this specific point in time and space. That's not random. That's a pattern. And if it's a pattern, something designed it. Something is using us to complete the design. Stop. I'm so tired, Marcus. I'm so tired of thinking. His eyes were closing. I shook him hard. Don't fall asleep. Stay with me. What's the point? We can't leave. We're part of it now. We'll leave at first light, I promise. We'll find a way out. He nodded, but I don't think he believed me. Dawn came at 6:47 a.m. I'd been checking my watch obsessively, watching the minutes crawl past. The sky lightened slowly, fog moving through the trees. James had stayed awake, but barely. His eyes were bloodshot, his face haggard. Okay, I said, let's try again. New direction this time. Due west, straight line, no trail. We packed up and started walking. The forest in daylight looked normal again. Just trees and rocks and frozen ground. Whatever had been watching us during the night was gone. Or at least, invisible. We hiked west using my compass, marking trees as we passed them so we'd know if we were circling back. We hiked for 2 hours straight. No circles this time. We were making progress, getting farther from camp. Hope started to build in my chest. Maybe the night was just the worst of it. Maybe we really were going to get out. Then James saw the marks. More trees with those deep gouges, those sets of 4 parallel lines. But these were different. These formed a trail of their own, leading deeper into the forest, away from where we were going, and carved into the largest tree, about chest height, was a word. Understand. James walked toward it like he was in a trance. It's showing us the way. No, we're going west, toward the truck. We'll never reach the truck, you know that. It won't let us. But maybe if we follow this, if we try to understand... James, listen to yourself. That's exactly what the journal said not to do. He turned to look at me, and his expression was calm. Too calm. David was afraid to understand. That's why it kept him here. That's why he couldn't leave. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm tired of fighting. I just want to know. Know what? What it wants, what pattern we're completing, why it brought us here. He started walking, following the marked trees deeper into the forest, away from escape, away from safety. James, stop! He didn't stop. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to decide what to do. Let him go and save myself, follow him and hope I could bring him back. The smart choice was obvious, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave him. I followed. The marked trees led us for maybe a mile, getting deeper into terrain I didn't recognise. The forest here was old, the trees massive and dark, the ground covered in years of needles. That silence was back. Absolute and crushing. No wind. No animal sounds. Just our footsteps and breathing. Then the trees opened into a clearing, maybe 200 feet across, perfectly circular. The ground was flat and bare, no vegetation, just dark earth. And in the centre of the clearing, standing upright like they'd been planted, were rifles. 7 of them. Bolt actions mostly. Different makes and models. All standing perfectly vertical in the ground. Barrels pointing at the sky. James walked towards them slowly. I followed, my skin crawling. As we got closer, I could see they were old. Some had rust. Some had moss growing on the stocks. They'd been here a while. James reached the nearest one and looked at the stock. There was a name carved into the wood. D. Kowalski, 2017. The next rifle had a different name and date, R. Fletcher, 2015. The next, M. Hernandez, 2013. All of them had names. All of them had dates. 7 rifles. 7 hunters who'd come to these mountains and never left. This is where it ends, James said quietly. This is the center of the pattern. We're leaving. Right now. You can leave. I'm staying. James. I need to understand, Marcus. That's the only way out. Not running. Not fighting. Understanding. Becoming part of the pattern. That's what it wants. He unslung his rifle and walked to the center of the clearing. I grabbed his arm, tried to pull him back, but he shook me off with surprising strength. Thank you for bringing me here, he said. I know you didn't mean to, but this is what I needed. This is what I came to the mountains to find. An end to thinking. An end to patterns. Just silence. There are 7 rifles here. 7 people who thought the same thing. Where are they, James? Where did they go? He smiled. It was the saddest thing I've ever seen. They understood. He drove his rifle into the ground, barrel up, next to the others. It stood perfectly straight, like the earth was holding it in place. Then he sat down cross-legged in the center of the clearing, closed his eyes, and was still. James, get up right now. He didn't move. James. Nothing. I don't know how long I stood there, screaming at him, trying to pull him to his feet. He wasn't unconscious. His breathing was steady, his heartbeat strong when I checked. But it was like he'd left. Like his body was there, but everything that made him James had gone somewhere else. The light in the clearing started to change. The sun was still up. I could see it through the trees, but the shadows were growing. Not naturally. They were spreading across the ground toward James, toward me, moving like they were alive. In the shadows, I could see those gaps again, those spaces where reality didn't quite meet up, and something was moving through them, coming closer. I ran. I'm not proud of it. I left James sitting in that clearing, and I ran as hard as I could. Terror drove me, pure animal panic. I crashed through the forest, branches hitting my face, my pack bouncing on my back. I had no idea which direction I was going. I just ran. And somehow, impossibly, I found myself on the trail, the real trail, the one that led back to the trailhead. I recognized landmarks. I knew where I was. I didn't stop running. I ran for hours, my lungs burning, my legs cramping, convinced that if I stopped for even a moment, those shadows would catch me. The sun moved across the sky. The temperature rose. The forest gradually became more familiar. At 4:17 p.m., I reached the trailhead. My truck was there, right where I'd left it 4 days ago. I fumbled with my keys, got the door open, locked myself inside, started the engine. The radio came on, some talk show, normal and mundane and beautiful. I drove to the ranger station and told them everything. A hunter was missing. James Harding. We'd been camped near Kettle Creek. He'd walked into the forest and didn't come back. I gave them his information, his license plate number, his emergency contact. They organised a search party. They found nothing. No body, no tracks. No sign James had ever been there. They found our camp near Kettle Creek. My tent, his tent, our gear. They found our tracks on the trail leading north, then west. Then they just vanished. Like we'd walked off the edge of the earth. They found the clearing with the rifles. All 8 of them now, including James's Remington 700. But the names carved into the stocks were worn smooth, impossible to read. And when the rangers tried to pull the rifles from the ground, they wouldn't budge, like they were part of the earth itself. The official report said James Harding went missing in the Idaho wilderness on November 21st, 2019. Presumed dead. His body was never recovered. The case is still open. I told them about the journal we found, but it was gone. Either I dropped it during my panic, or it was never real in the first place. The rangers looked at me with that expression I've seen before, pity mixed with skepticism. They think grief and altitude made me unreliable. They don't say it, but I know. I went to a therapist. She diagnosed me with PTSD, gave me medication for the nightmares. I told her about the gaps in reality, about the presence watching from the shadows. She said it was trauma manifesting as hallucination, a way for my mind to cope with losing a client. Maybe she's right. Maybe I didn't see anything. Maybe the fear and exhaustion created something that wasn't there. But I don't think so, because I can still feel it sometimes when I'm alone in the dark. That attention, that presence, like something is still watching, still waiting. I haven't guided a hunt since, can't bring myself to go back into those mountains. I sold my business last year and moved to Boise, got a job doing outdoor education for high school kids, day trips only, nothing overnight, nothing remote. But sometimes, in the middle of a class, I'll see a student staring off into space with that same expression James had. That look of someone seeing patterns, making connections, understanding things they shouldn't understand. And I want to shake them. Want to tell them to stop thinking, stop analysing, stop trying to make sense of the world. Because some patterns aren't meant to be understood. Some things exist in the gaps, in the spaces between knowing and not knowing. And the moment you see them, really see them, they see you too. James's rifle is still out there. Rifle number 8 in a clearing that shouldn't exist. And someday, someone else will find it. We'll find that circle of rifles standing like grave markers, and they'll try to understand. They'll look for the pattern. And when they do, there will be 9 rifles. I think about James every day. Wonder if he found what he was looking for. If understanding brought him peace, or just a different kind of horror. I'll never know. And that's what haunts me most, the not knowing. The question mark where an answer should be. Last month, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a journal, new but weathered, like it had been left outside. The first page had my name and a date. Marcus Webb, November 2019. The rest of the pages were blank. I threw it in the fireplace and watched it burn, but sometimes, late at night, I wonder if that was the right choice. Wonder if I should have read it. Should have tried to understand what happened to James. Wonder if somewhere in those blank pages was an answer. But I don't go looking. I don't try to find patterns in what happened, because that's what it wants. That's how it pulls you in. And I'm not going back. The mountains are still there. Kettle Creek still runs through that meadow. The clearing with 8 rifles still exists, hidden in the forest where the maps don't quite match the terrain. And something still watches from the shadows, patient and endless, waiting for the next person who needs to understand. I just hope it isn't you.